Want to sharpen your game? Join the DFM Coaching Patreon for exclusive technique breakdowns and mindset training. Now, let's get started.
Welcome to Tap In. My name is David Figueroa Martinez of DFM Coaching, and today we're going to be discussing lineage in Jiu-Jitsu. This is a loaded topic for me. So if you're newer or you're not aware, Jiu-Jitsu has a really prideful aspect of itself when it comes to the lineage of your belt rank. Who did you get your belt from? Who did they get their belt from? Who did that person get their belt from? So when you often go on like BJJ Heroes, I think that's the website, they'll have a segment there that has the lineage of anyone that you look up. When you go to certain websites for the gym owner, you'll have a lineage and they'll put it in their bio. And it's a sense of pride. It's a form of letting the world know where my knowledge came from. And there's a certain affiliation that says from the source, and it gives you the impression that it's coming from a more pure sense or a more direct lineage, which is great. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not shitting on that. I'm not shitting on lineage per se. I think that we put too much stock in it. I think we put too heavy a respect on that. The same way that we put too heavy a respect on people who get their black belt, period. People who happen to be good enough to be awarded a black belt, and we praise them and we look at them in a certain way. We do the same thing with lineage. Lineage, to me, let me backtrack. Lineage currently implies that sometimes that your technique or your traditions or your philosophies have been thoroughly thought out. And if I got my black belt, let's say, from Hoyler Gracie, that my approach and technique and abilities were so good by that person who's held at such a high regard that I should definitely be worth either having in a competition or having come in for seminar or workshop or having as someone that I should learn from if I buy an instructional. Like it's a resume of some sort, and that I have somehow inherited deep connections to tradition, that I've inherited almost worldly knowledge of technique or philosophical approach to jiu-jitsu. And while you do take on quite a bit from your instructor, this isn't really how it works. I don't have this deep knowledge of an armbar because I learned it from XYZ. I have it because I've put a bunch of hours on the mat and it was trial and error. By this point, I think my opinion is that lineage should switch from technical know-how or be blended with technical know-how, and the idea that the people who came before me knew how to set up culture, ethics, safe training, clean environments, and less to do about how well I can do an armbar, how well I can do an omoplata or a pass. While I understand, like, if I get my black belt from Marcelo Garcia and I'm a butterfly guy, that it's easy to say, like, his butterfly must be the next world because he does butterfly and he got his black belt from a guy who has mastered butterfly. Yes and no. Like, it doesn't imply that I've taken all of their knowledge and put it into mine. Now, if my black belt person that I go to is worldly, all world on like ethics and creating culture, that's a more sense of pride for me than the technique. Because in my opinion, I think anyone can get proper and great technique from damn near every black belt. It doesn't impress me as much. But if I got a black belt from Marcelo, who I know, who I've never heard anything bad from or about, who kicked out a black belt because he didn't follow Marcelo's view of what a black belt should be conducting themselves, that goes higher on my list as a benchmark than whether my technical know-how is at Marcelo's level. I'm hoping that makes sense. I want to start weighing more of the culture setting as a benchmark for what this lineage actually means, opposed to just technique. I think that we are missing a huge aspect when it comes to how we're grading quote unquote black belts, and because they're lineage. I personally don't even use my lineage. I have not bothered. I got my black belt from a gentleman that I have issues with, whose culture has issues, and I don't have. There's no sense of pride for me to say that I got my black belt from such and such and such and such, and that they got their black belt from such and such and such and such. And that lineage is strong, but I don't even bother discussing it. I don't bother putting it out there very often. I just don't. I don't think it's needed. I don't think I need it to prove a point. I don't need it to teach a class. I don't need it to make a small name for myself. I don't need it. And because I understand the situation that we're in, which is what a lot of people are in right now, I don't want to carry that with me. So I have severed ties. I don't mention it very often. It's not something I highly put on my resume, or it just doesn't, I don't care. I just don't. And right now, with everything going on with like the checkmats and the autos and a bunch of these other places, we have to make decisions, and sometimes you have to cut ties. So if you put your entire identity on the lineage that you have, and you made decisions on who you're going to learn from because of that lineage, and then you get to a point where that lineage now doesn't really mean a whole lot, and you cut ties, it's probably going to be a mark against you. And I don't mean from other people. Because I put my whole identity into that person or that line, how do I view myself? So we need to start looking at lineage as in, hey, where did you work? Yeah, it's great. Like, hey, I worked at Chase and I was a bank teller, and then I moved up and I was a branch manager, and then I went to JP Morgan, and then I went here, and it's a resume. It's a decent look at maybe who you learn from and the level of instruction, but it shouldn't be your identity, and it shouldn't be a benchmark or how I'm going to view you one way or the other. We're all individuals and we all make decisions, and just because I learn an armbar from this gentleman here does not mean that I even do the armbar at that level. It doesn't mean my technique is at that level. It doesn't mean that I replicated a whole lot from that person. It needs to be more, especially now as we get into this age of Jiu-Jitsu starting to, I hope at least, clean house a little bit. We look at these lineages not just as importance of historical references of who we learn from and who they learn from, but more of what kind of quality people were these people? Like, what kind of morals and ethics did these people have? If they didn't have those things, can they really teach you those things? So that's the hard part. So I want us to start getting away from it. I want us to start, hey, if it's a sense of pride for you and you want to put it on your website or your bio, by all means, go ahead. If you really respect these people and you know them and you know they were ethical and they went out of their way to make sure that the people around them were safe and they conducted themselves in a way that should be mirrored, then by all means, throw it on your bio, throw it on your website. There's a sense of pride in that. And I'm hoping that the people that I promote, when they go down the line, that I'm brought up in a way of, David, he was about this, this, and this. He went out of his way to help this, this, and that. He wasn't the most well-known. He wasn't a huge competitor, but the culture he made was an impact, and it created a line of quote unquote descendants that also took that on. That would be a sense of pride for me. But that's not the case right now. The case right now is we hold these people at a certain level because of their technical know-how, not because they were great at creating environments, not because they were great at leadership, not because they were the greatest at making better humans, Oftentimes it's just their technical know-how, and that's their claim of fame, and that's what we hold them as. And when you start looking deep, you find out, oh no, this guy was a piece of shit. This guy did this, this, and this. That guy abused students verbally. That guy did whatever. And it changes everything. So I came across this article by Sam Dennett, if I have the name correctly. And there was this quote. He did this beautiful write-up on Lineage and whatnot. And he had this specific quote that just stood out to me. And it was, Lineage was meant to be a record of care, of stewardship, of who was trusted to pass something on safely. That's the model that I had not even seen this until recently, but that's the model that I'm working under. And when you put that on top of many of the people that we herald as greats and we herald as great points of reference in our lineage, they don't hold up to that. They just don't. Well, you can argue it was a different era and whatnot and this and that. We could. But really, this needs to be more about how well did we treat people? How well did we safeguard our academies and our students? How well did we make sure that they were okay? When you get to black belt, and I was talking about this to some of my students after class, it is really easy to get swept up in what happens at black belt. When I was brown, and I've said this before, when I was a brown belt, people asked me a lot of questions. They went to me, they referenced me, hey, so I'm having, and that was the role I played. I liked helping people. When I got to black belt, that got magnified even more so. People, they kind of hang on your word sometimes. And that's the culture. You get a title professor. You now have a black belt with a red bar. Some time passes, then you got the professor bars. Some more time passes, then you start adding some degrees. And there's a big gap between you as the instructor, head instructor, gym owner, and everyone else, specifically the lower ranks. They hang on your words. They hang on the things you say. You can improve someone's day with a simple compliment, and you can ruin their experience with a couple seconds of impatience. There's a huge responsibility in what we do, but more importantly, it's really easy to get swept up in that drug. I remember feeling the way I was being treated and how there's such a gap between brown, 4 stripes, and then being black belt. And I remember thinking, it is really easy to get swept up into this drug, get addicted to the power that's being exchanged here. And if you're not built for this, you start making decisions that are unethical. You start making decisions that are skewed in your favor, but not in the student's favor. You maybe start accepting things that you shouldn't accept, gifts, attention, compliments to a certain degree. You let that get to your head and you think that you should get more. So it's really easy, especially if you don't have strong ethics, to get to this position. And because of the way you're treated, specifically if you're like the head instructor of a program or a gym, and you don't go outside that gym, in this little domain, this chieftain, I am the captain, I am the ruler, I am the president, I am the king. It's really easy to get swept up in that shit and think your shit doesn't stink and start taking advantage of people. So in some regards, part of me is like, I can see how that happens. But in some regards, also some people get to that position and that was their goal to begin with. So our lineages have to start being more about the cultures we're creating and the cultures we want to create moving forward. I don't want anything that resembles what I had coming up. I just don't. I don't lead that way. So for me, I don't mention my lineage very often. Some people will ask. I don't think it's on my website. I don't think I've mentioned it much at all in my writings. I don't mention it. I don't think I've mentioned it at all on this podcast. And it just doesn't mean a whole lot to me. Do I respect some of the people? Like I see Hoyler come by on occasion, and I get happy when I roll with him because his technique is so much cleaner than mine. He has a very engaging personality, but I don't know the gentleman. I know him a little bit on the mats, but I don't really know him. We don't hang out. I don't know what kind of culture he would set up as the instructor. I don't know. But the culture that I'm trying to create went against the culture that I was brought up with my instructor. And because of that, I sever ties. I don't mention it very often. If someone asks, maybe I'll say something, but it's not widely displayed because I don't think it's going to garner me anything. I don't think, if anything, it might be a negative, and it just doesn't represent me. So I don't mention it. I am envious of people who are in great cultures with their instructors and have great relationships, and their instructors are great people. I'll be completely honest about that. There's an enviousness about it, but I just doesn't have the same weight for me anymore. And at one time it did. But again, that phrase from that article, lineage was meant to be a record of care, of stewardship, of who was trusted to pass something on safely. That's what I live by now. So if my lineage didn't necessarily live up to that, it's not something I'm going to be carrying around. I'm hoping this makes sense for any of you that have maybe had to make tough choices, especially recently, of, hey, your instructor is now being accused of some stuff. That's a difficult one. And you're going to have to make a decision on whether you want to publicly display that or not. It is completely your choice. It doesn't discount who you are. I hope it doesn't. But it's tough. And if you need advice or you have a quick question about any of this, please let me know. DFM.2099 on Instagram and Threads. Until next time, thank you so much.